Hey friends, welcome. Today in this video, we'll be looking at another project, beginner-friendly project of React. So we will aim to create this beautiful frequently asked question section, which is technically called as Accordion. So what we will be building is this one. So the functionality goes as follows. So when I clicked over the plus button, it will expand the answer of the following question, the above question. And it will do for the same, and whenever I clicked on the subtract button, it will just collapse to its original position. So this is what we are going to build today. This is a beginner friendly React project, and this is a part 2 of beginner friendly React series. So if you haven't watched the part 1, I will definitely recommend you to watch that first, because I had covered the project of image slider in the part 1 from beginning to start. So if you ever feel stuck at some point in this project, you can comment me down. Otherwise, you can watch the part 1 as a prerequisite to this project. And I will try to explain as much as I can in this project as well, so you can follow along whatever you like. So we would like to make this project. So first thing first, in order to make this project, I will open up my VS Code. So let me go to the VS Code. And as you can see, I have already created a React app and cleaned it up. I cleaned it up the folders and files of a React app. And what it has, nothing. It just have the index.html, which is by default given by the reactJs. It has this app.js, which is exactly where we write our code inside that div. So this is also empty, just one component, or you can say function. And inside the app CSS, we'll be having the universal styling for our entire web page. So it is empty as well. So we'll be styling that as well in this video as well. And in the Accordion.js, this is the component. We do not have anything, so it's empty. So we'll start off by creating some HTML inside the app.js. So we'll style it over, and once the HTML and styling, that is the markup part, is done, we'll move on to writing React code in order to achieve that functionality. So stay tuned. So how we do it? As usual, I will make a div with a class container. And inside the container, I will make a heading, that is frequently asked question. Frequently asked questions. And before I think let me tell you one thing. So right now, as you can see, this is the question, and this is the particular answer for the question. So it is not feasible and efficient for us to create these 4 of them inside HTML, because we want to dynamically populate this data. So in order to do that, what we can do, we can create some array with an object which will contain a question as in first key and value pair, and then ID, some ID to it, in order to uniquely identify which question we are on, and the answer. So what I'm trying to say is, it's a simple thing. So I will go to the VS Code, and here in the text.txt, I have created a dummy data. So I will explain what it contains, but I will just copy and paste first. So I will name it const, and I will name it questions, and I will make an array and paste it. So as you can see, right now I have an ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, so which is uniquely identification for the data, and the question key with the value as a question, and answer key with the value as an answer. So we can use the map method to map over these questions here, so that we don't have to write extra HTML or to make the data static. Instead, we will use React to make it dynamic. So how we can do that? So first thing, I will create an answer. I will create a question box as an div, and inside that div I think it's time to write some JSX. So questions, that is the array dot map, and we will take the question out. Okay, individual question, single question, and the index. Obviously we will create a separate component for it, because I need to show you first, and then I will explain what is the need of creating the separate component. Why can't we do it inside the app.js itself? Okay, so I will go to the accordion.js. So first thing first, I will import the import reacts from React, and then I will go ahead and write const accordion, and this is a fat arrow function, and it will return something. Okay, just like that. I also need to export it because we want to import that inside app.js. So I'm exporting it. Export default accordion. Yeah, and here we will have div with the class box, let's say. Okay, so let's say div class name box, and inside that we have another div which is kind of a wrapper div, and here h4 we'll say we have question. So as of now, don't worry about how we will get the question. I will explain you everything, but we will have h4. So this h4 is basically this. Okay, and then we will have a div with the class name toggle. So toggle basically means this button. So as you can see here, this plus minus button is nothing but a toggle. Okay, toggle, and on click. So whenever we are clicking on the toggle button, we want something to happen. We want that answer to be shown, and at the same time to be disappear whenever we double click it. So it is an alternating clicking. Whenever we first time clicked it, it collapses and shows us the answer, and whenever we second time clicked it on the same button, we want it to disappear. So that's the basic functionality we are trying to aim for. Okay, so I will not write anything here as of now. So this one and the answers. Okay, so that's the important part. So for the answer, we'll not write anything here as well. So first thing first, we need to make sure that this question and the answer, whatever we are trying to fetch here, is going to be accessible for this, because the questions and answers are present at the questions array, and here at the accordion we do not have the questions array. So in order to access that, we can pass it using props. So what are the props? So props are basically the way in which we pass data between components. So this is the way React provide us to pass data between components. Why do we pass the data between components? Because, for instance, let's consider an analogy. Humans communicate with each other through language. So suppose through English language. So if you fundamentally break it down, it's words. Okay, so words then form sentences, then form speech, and then we have conversation. Okay, so we communicate with each other through language. Okay, so in the similar way, as in the case of humans, we have word or sentences as data. So React also provide props, and we pass data through that props in order to communicate with the components. Okay, so for instance, now we can import the exported accordion. So import accordion. Now we have imported. So I will show you how to write it here. Okay, so inside the app.js, now we have imported it. So let me return this accordion now instead of, because we have written the required HTML already inside accordion. Okay, so as you can see, the HTML is already written. I can write the HTML itself here as well without creating the accordion, but there is a little caveat. So I will address to it after some time, but now understand the concept of props. Okay, so I will pass the key here. So key is basically index. So in the previous video I forgot to explain about the key. So if you do not mention the key on the iteratable object, on the iteratable component, or on the component which is repeatedly being displayed on a screen using nav or for each or any kind of iterable method, the React cannot distinguish between the, also the code works, but the React throws a warning. If you open up the console log, the React throws the warning to mention the key. So key should be unique. So index is obviously going to be unique. So that's why I'm assigning key with the value index. Okay, so this is just a convention, or this is just a good practice to mention the key whenever you are trying to iterate through any of the component. Now we will pass question as a what we have here on looping through question dot. Since it is an object, we can use dot notation and can pick the exact key value we are looking for. Okay, so we pick the question out, and similar way we will do the answer and question dot answer. Okay, so as you can see, so this question and this answer is basically the prompt, and you need to make sure that you will be using the same name inside the accordion.js in order to grab it as well. You cannot change it. If you want to, you can just change it here, and then similar way accordingly you can grab it inside the accordion.js. Okay, so now that we pass the required data, we can just go to accordion.js and we can say instead of question, so first thing first, we will just destructure it. So if you are unfamiliar with the concept of destructuring, I will recommend you to check it out or comment down and I will make a video about it. Okay, so now we want to destructure question and answer. Remember that I am using the same name as I used while passing the props to the accordion component. So now that I have this, I can just simply use JSX and question here. Okay, and on click we need to make something. So before that we need to introduce the state onto your application. Why? Because as you can see, I will explain it with this. So now whenever you are clicking, the answer shows, and whenever you are clicking back, the answer disappears. So the visibility of the code, the visibility of the answer of the question depends upon the state in this application. So each individual question here has its own state. So is visible, if it visible is true, then we are showing the answer. If the visibility is false, then we are not showing the answer. For each individual question we have state. So let me create a state first. It's simple. So const, so I will name it as usual, which is pretty obvious is visible, set is visible. So while creating the state, we have first argument as an state name, and the second is the set is visible, which is a function in order to set the state. Okay, so we'll use state hook, use state, and the initial value should be false because initially none of our questions has the answer as visible. Okay, now we have this on the basis of this click. So whenever we click that, we want the contrary behavior. What I mean by that is whenever we clicked on it, we want if the state of our question is visible is equal to true, then whenever we clicked it, we want it to false, and if it's false, whenever we clicked it, we want it to true. So we want the inverse behavior, right? So in order to do that, what I can do is say set is visible, and I will just say exclamation, that is not is visible. So the initially whenever we clicked it, we know that the initially it is false. So on click, set is visible will convert that false into true, and if it is true, on clicking that, set is visible will convert that into false, and vice versa. So this is how we achieve the inverse kind of functionality in React. Okay, so now that we do that, we also want to make sure to have these buttons show. So firstly, if it is false, we have plus button, and whenever we clicked on it, it becomes true, and then we should have the minus button. So we'll move on to achieve this. It's quite simple. Now that we have state, it's pretty simple to achieve these things. Okay, so I will just do one thing. Okay, I will just close this tab, and I will just write JS is visible. So if it's visible, that is initially it is false, right? So if it's false, then we want it to subtract, and if it's true, we want it to this plus. Okay, so this is quite obvious. Just try on it and try to understand it. It is quite obvious. Okay, so it is a ternary operation that I performed here, just like if else. So if this condition is true, then this should be returned. If it's false, then else this should be returned. Okay, it's quite obvious. And answer. So we can also decide whether to show the answer or not on basis of our state. Okay, so let's say is visible. So if it's visible, then we want to show the p tag, and the p tag will have class name as answer text. Okay, and inside the p tag we have the answer that we have destructured from the props. So once the is visible is true, then and only then we want it to show the answer. Otherwise we have not written any condition, so it should be empty. That means it should be not visible in case of the false state. Okay, so now let's try to save it. Okay, I will save every files. Okay, and I will try to run the React code. So I will close this up because and I will fresh start, run this npm start to run the React app. Okay, so it will take a few seconds, so let it. And I want to mention one thing, that how we also have to write some CSS code. So we will be doing that once we have this ready. Okay, so close this. Okay, now that we have saved this all the files, we'll go ahead and check on the browser. So this is the output. Obviously this is without the CSS styling. So before showing the functionality, I will want you to write this CSS code with me. So okay, so I will go ahead and write some CSS code. So inside app.css, I will start off by writing the basic CSS styling. So before that, I have a font here. So I will import that, and here CSS research styling. Okay, so margin 0, padding 0, box sizing border box. So what this means is it is applying the margin 0 and padding 0 and box heading border box to all the available elements inside CSS, which is called as the resetting of the style sheet. And then we select the body, and the font family should be Poppins, the ones I have imported here on the top. Okay, so now that we mentioned the font family, we can say minimum width. So minimum width to be 100 with width, and minimum height to be 100 with height. So we're doing this in order to make sure that we apply display flex, justify content center, and align item center to center everything inside the body. Okay, now we will move to styling our container, which is simple. Container background color, so RGB. It has a value as 184 and 130. Okay, so this is the background color for our container. And we also have padding for our container, which is 1 rem, and display flex. So let's say flex direction column gap 2 rem. Okay, so we have this. So let me try to, okay, as you can see, we have got something here, and it's a good start. Now that we have other things as well, so container H2, so we'll target H2, text align center. Okay, we have container questions box, sorry, Q&A box. Let me try to say what I mentioned here. Okay, should be Q&A box. Q fan hey BX. Okay, so it will also have the background color as RGB. I think this container needs to be have no styling. Instead, this styling is for the Q&A box, and the container basically have a max width of 570 pixel. Okay, so let me save it and go back. Yeah, now that we got the same thing. Okay, so let's try to quickly style rest of the components or the elements. So container has H3 as well, so we'll copy and paste this. We'll say H3, and it has text align center, font size 2 rem, and margin bottom has 1.4 rem. Okay, Then we will have container, Q&A box, background color, let's say Accordion, and padding 1.1 mm. So inside the box, I also want to style the H4, I guess. Yeah, H4 tag. Width 100%. Background color white. Padding 0.3 mm. Margin bottom to be 0.4 mm. Save it. Let's try to see. Okay, now it's taking a shape of what we're trying to achieve. Okay, still this plus button has to be inlined, so I will try to make it. So I will go ahead and go for the container, then Q&A box, and inside the box we have a single div which will wrap up our questions and answers. So display flex and align item center. Now that we have applied this, I think our job is done. Okay, pretty much, but we want this plus button also to have some styling. So let's say go to this, and remember we have toggle class attached to the plus button. So we will say font size 1.5 rem. Okay, and cursor to be pointer. Padding is going to be 0.3 rem. Background color should be white. I think that's it. That's it for the CSS. We have applied everything. Let's see. Okay, now that it is working. So we have also write the React code for it and the CSS code as well. So let's see if our application works or not. Yeah, it works. It works damn good. So it is now working as we are trying to make it work. Okay, so I think, and one more thing I'm almost forgetting. So why didn't use, instead of creating this separate component, why didn't I just write this piece of HTML code inside the app.js? Because if we do so, we need to create the state inside the app.js, and app.js, when we create the state inside the app.js for the component, every question and answer will contain the same state. So is visible will be same for all the questions available inside the array. So what that means is whenever we clicked on one of the question, one of the button here, is visible will going to be true for all the rest of question. So on clicking any of the question, every question and answer will show, and when double clicking or when clicking on the subtract button of any of an individual question, everything will collapse and every answer will be invisible. So that way our functionality has distorted, and the thing we are trying to achieve is not fulfilled. So in order to fix this issue, what we can do is we can create a separate state for each of the questions. So that's what we do. We created the component so that it can have its separate space, and inside the component, for each component we are creating is visible and set is visible. So we are creating this state. So in order to create the separate state for each of the component, so that it can have its own state and it can maintain whether it is true or it is false for the particular question and answer. I think that's it for today's video. I try to explain as much as I can about this. And this is a beginner friendly project, and we'll also be covering some other projects as well in this series. We'll start from basics and we'll try to go towards more advanced concept. So if you have any doubt, you can just comment down and you can ask me the questions. Other than that, you always have Google, ChatGPT. I emphasize on that a lot because these are the great resources to ask the questions if you do not have any companion to answer. So take care, stay tuned, and be waited for the next video.